So, like, the real question is, what's the real name now? Are we going with Goda? Are we going with Yujo? Satoru Okotsu? We gotta pick. What's up, guys? Pencil here, and here we are to do a breakdown / review for chapter 261 of Jujutsu Kaisen, which is known as the Decisive Battle in the Uninhabited Demon Infested Shinjuku, Part 34. And ladies and gentlemen, this chapter has quite a lot in it, but we just don't have that much time. So let's not waste any more time, and let's hop right into it. Heading me, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do happen to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact. What a shame, Yuji Itadori. Ultimately, despite desiring to be something more, you are but nothing more than something to be knocked away. The moment the more interesting thing revealed itself upon the battlefield. One meek to the jaw, and you are splattered against the ground. All that rage, all that hatred, all that desire for victory, reduced to nothing more than what you are. A speck, a cog, in an almighty machine that could knock you away at any moment. But don't worry, Yuji Itadori. Your fate is not yet finished. Your role is not yet done. For the strongest is here. The strongest body in history has returned, being wielded by the one boy who could hypothetically begin to understand the burden of the strongest. Or will he? That is the question. But yeah, obviously the biggest reveal is that bada bing, bada boom. That isn't Gojo, that's Yuta Okotsu. In every way, shape, and form, that is Yuta Okotsu. In the body of Satoru Gojo through the means of Big Jaku's technique. Now, here's the things that are massive this chapter. Confirmation-wise, validity-wise, possibility-wise, all that. Biggest thing, it does seem like Rika needs that. It doesn't seem like there's any hope that last Sukuna finger's anywhere near in play. Because it's specifically mentioned here, at least by this filthy, disgusting, absolutely abhorrent creature, that yeah, essentially Rika needs to have consumed Kenjaku's head, the brain, to get the technique for Yuta to use it. Rika is the conduit, the key, so her getting her arm eaten, possibility. Now that is just the case. No more possibility. Yuta's technique works via consumption of a piece of an individual. Sukuna wasn't just theorizing, he was right. That final finger was consumed by Yuta Okotsu, and by Yuta Okotsu, it was consumed by Rika, that allowed Yuta Okotsu to wield it. So Rika acts as essentially an intermediary. This means that Yuta doesn't have to eat people, but Rika likely did. I'm assuming, though, this varies case by case and person by person. I assume the reason that Kenjaku's whole head likely had to be consumed in this case is because, you know, the brain is the container of the technique. If they just ate like a piece of Geto's body, they would likely just get cursed spirit manipulation, which isn't what they needed. They needed the brain in order to get the body hopping technique. For someone like Charles, who seems to have all of his limbs intact, it's very likely that they just took a piece of his hair or maybe like a fingernail, and that was more than enough. For Inumaki, it was like just a piece of his hair or something else. It wasn't likely anything too crazy, so on and so forth. And obviously for Sukuna was the finger. So that's a big confirmation. Another big confirmation. It's likely that Yuta Okotsu will not fall by means of the 5-minute timer running out. At least in my opinion, that's what seems to be the case. Because Mei lays out 3 possibilities. 1, Kenjaku's technique is a consistently active technique, aka it needs to be on at all times or else Kenjaku will just... This seems not likely. Like, based on the fact that we've seen Kenjaku in technique burnout, we've seen him hop from body to body for extended periods of time to the point where the stitches actually fade on the head. In Kaori's case, where Kenjaku lived his Kaori for a long enough time, I don't think this is the case. So Yuta, very not likely perishing at the end of the 5-minute time limit. Second case is the idea that Yuta Okotsu could fall because Kenjaku's technique sort of does like a system update every once in a while to confirm that the user of the technique is still using the technique. Like, time will pass and then, boop, if the ability to activate the technique is not there, then Yuta will plop over. Maybe not at the end of the 5 minutes, but maybe 5 years from now. And then, of course, there's the final technique variation where ultimately one just properly fuses with the body. And that's the most likely one. Once again, we've seen Kenjaku in technique burnout. We've seen Kenjaku get beaten up in all kinds of different ways. We've seen him live and fuse into multiple bodies. Like, I think it's just that. Yuta is going to be fine, at least in terms of the typical 5 minutes. Now, the real question is the efficiency and efficacy of Yuta Okotsu's body. Don't get me wrong, there's a bunch of interesting character stuff here that I do want to talk about, but the other major thing that I just want to talk about as a confirmation was, where is it? Essentially, Yuta confirms in this chapter that he can do both. he can have basically unlimited access to his copy ability without fully manifesting Rika as long as he's using his domain. But he can also only use his technique outside of the domain for the 5 minutes. So that is still a thing. A lot of people with Rika being unmanifested inside of Yuta's domain and the idea that Yuta just popped it out, putting the ring on and everything without fully manifesting Rika, a lot of people thought, well, maybe he can just use his techniques without fully manifesting Rika outside of a domain. No. That 5 minute time limit is still there. Now, this does naturally raise the question, well, where is Rika now? Considering that Gojo is revealed, or Guta? Once again, I'm not sure what we're calling him. Yujaku? Not Yujaku. No, not Yujaku. Yujo? I'm just going to call him Goda. I could call him Gogeta, but I'm going to call him Goda. Goda doesn't seem to be wearing the ring, like, at least anywhere from where I can tell. I can't see. Let's see, where's his other hand? Maybe he is still wearing it? Because he notes here that he has to apologize to Rika for moving the ring over to the right hand because his left arm is actually off. Like, he lost it. Sukuna, the way he aimed the strong dismantle to cleave Yuta in half, yeah, the left arm with the ring did completely fade off. And you can see the curse of Rika still burning strong. But we don't see the ring on this hand, and it's very likely that ultimately the curse may actually be tied to Yuta's flesh, and it may not have been able to be transferred over to Satoru Gojo, meaning he may not be able to use his innate technique. However, once again, thanks to Kenjaku, at least revealing to Choso, and likely to our casting crew, that, hey, guess what? Kenjaku can use the technique of previous bodies he's been in. It's likely, and obviously the body hopping itself is not a technique inherent to the new bodies Kenjaku goes to, but a product of his initial technique. It's very, very likely that Yuta will still have access to the copy technique. However, Yuta elects to go, not for his own domain, but he goes for Unlimited Void here. Now, this is interesting. Is this a byproduct of the bodies not having properly merged yet? I don't know. That's the thing. I'm not sure why he wouldn't go for his domain, because he could still apply the Unlimited Void sure hit to his domain, and then still have access to all the infinite katanas in there, and then wield them through the body of Satoru Gojo, which would likely make all of them infinitely more dangerous. However, I can somewhat understand why he wouldn't go for his domain, simply for the fact that if he did that, he wouldn't be able to use the Limitless as a sword to draw, as it would be applied to the domain. So maybe he's doing this so he has infinite access to red, blue, and possibly purple. That's also a question. Another question that's raised, hey, Toto and Yuji, yeah, they're still here. And while the end of the chapter does highlight that Yuta Kotsu, through the hands of Satoru Gojo, is revealing the solution, and it specifically says the solution yet again, which is the solution that Gojo had was the tiny domain, it's very likely that maybe Yuta went in alone, but considering these whole chapters about him sharing the burden of the strongest, it's very likely that Yuji and Toto are still going to be trapped in there with them. And with the domain sure hits canceling out, it's very likely that we are going to get a proper jumping of Goda, Yuji, and Toto, which is going to be interesting. And that, of course, raises the question of, well, okay, if we're going to get that proper jumping, how all out is Yuta going to be allowed to go against Sukuna for these 5 minutes? Is he going to be able to use red, blue, purple, and everything? Considering the biggest reason why they weren't all fighting with Gojo in the first place is because of the splash damage of his attacks. So I don't know. There's a lot of interesting openings that come with the possibility raised at the end of this chapter. But of course, I skipped all the major things, the major big bad points. How I feel about it in general, I'm happy. You know, I'm glad that we get to see Yuta fully embrace the calamitous nature that exists within his bloodline. The Fujiwara, the Sugiwara, everything that Yuta is culminating in this takeover. It wraps up almost every single one of Yuta's character interactions, a lot of the Yuta debates, a lot of the characterization of Yuta and the burden of the strongest that plays heavily into his character and Gojo's character. All of that is beautifully summated in here, so I do like the twist of it being Yuta. I do love that he uses Kenjaku's technique, and I do love how ultimately the whole idea of this just leads to a continuation of the cycle of Gojo versus Sukuna, even if it comes in the form of Gota versus Sukuna. And I'm interested to see how these two collide, especially considering Ryomen Sukuna should be much, 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 much weaker, right? But at the same time, he just casually one-shot and knocked away an 8 Black Flash amp to Yuji. So who knows? Maybe the gap between Gojo Satoru and Ryomen Sukuna was far, far greater than we ever imagined. Or, another thing that this chapter hints at, where is it? Gojo mentions that one of the biggest issues that Yuta had was his cursed energy control. And ultimately, maybe we're going to find out that Gojo Satoru wasn't just the strongest because of his flesh and body, but he was the strongest because he was Gojo Satoru. And maybe a lack of experience, a lack of understanding of curse energy control, and all that will culminate in Yuta Okkotsu failing to truly become the monster that the world needs in order to take down the original monster and culminate in his loss against Ryo and Sukuna, simply because he cannot use the body as well as the original. But that's, again, all the hardcore, like, scaling and confirmation and ability stuff. Let's talk about the characterization stuff in this chapter. I love it. I love it. Of course, I'm still iffy on Maki having so many complaints, but once again, that was me initially in the spoiler discussions. Now I perfectly get it. Maki, just like Toji, in spite of her liberation of cursed energy, in spite of being completely free, carved out everything, as Suguna said himself, unlike Yuji Itadori, Maki and Toji are still innately human. They are taken to the limits of human potential. They have surpassed all of humanity in a sense, but they're still innately human. So Maki's deep concern for Yuta makes absolute sense. Everyone's deep concern for Yuta makes absolute sense. But you know what I also love? I love how Hikari is the one to be like, you know what? Yeah, do it. If everything else fails, you need to do it. Hikari, the one sorcerer who's acknowledged by Uraume of many, many times past, like literally, what, like 10, 15 chapters ago at this point, but Hikari has been noted by Uraume to be the one sorcerer who understands what Sukuna and Uraume and Kenjaku understand. That ultimately, lingering and connecting oneself to humanity when you have the opportunity to transcend it, to leave those powers behind and leave that nature behind in order to become something greater, Hikari understands that. So he's the one who's most okay with Yuta doing this. He knows Yuta. He likely cares for Yuta just like everyone else does. And Maki's objections and Inumaki's objections, all of everyone's objections about the humanity, they're only raised by them, the other humans. But Hikari Kinji, he's like, what you gonna do, my G? Once again, as sad as I am that Hikari hasn't shown up to the battlefield yet, I do like the further characterization of him as this sort of transcendental monster. One that only the ancients can understand. And here's the thing. One of my biggest favorite parts about this chapter is the idea that Yuta, once again, is proving Uro's point in a strange, twisted sense. Remember what Uro said to Yuta. You will never become the next strongest. You will never become the next Satoru Gojo. In the case of Kenjaku, you cannot become a disaster, a calamity, something that rivals and transcends the heavens themselves, simply because you do not have it in you. And ultimately, even this, and if no one else wants to step up, then I will, is a further admission of Yuta's humanity. He sees the loneliness that Gojo feels. He understands it. He can compare himself to it. But just in the way that Gojo Satoru was a human being, Yuta Okkotsu is a human being. Even if he says, I'll throw it all away. Even if he says, I'll step up to that plate. Even if he says, I'll do whatever it takes. And not just says it, but backs it up. He gets sliced in half and is determined to do it, returns to the battlefield, tears the head of his sensei open, and gets placed within it to battle against the King of Curses once again. At the end of all things, at the end of the day, no matter what, Yuta Okkotsu's still a man. A man who refused to leave the strongest behind, even at the strongest request, when we see Gojo go to slaughter the higher-ups. And just as Gojo, a man who had the possibility to become a monster and had the potential to, ultimately never could, and was left behind and attempted to catch up in any way that he could, he failed. Yuta Okkotsu, someone who's doing his darndest to catch up, chasing that peak, chasing that potential that probably exists somewhere deeper than his core, that's in his very veins, as not just possibly what Gojo points out to be not just a Fujiwara, but a Sugiwara, a combination of two bloodlines of innate great potential, maybe not just the descendant of one of the great evil spirits, but two, deeper and more blessed than even Satoru Gojo himself. He's still a human. One that cares, one that loves, one that respects Satoru Gojo, just in the same way that everyone else did, but to a higher degree. But ultimately, at his core, Yuta Okkotsu cannot escape the fact that he is still human, that he still stands human, even in the face of what is so clearly a monster. Look at the end of the chapter. Look at their different reactions. Yuta Okkotsu is focused. He's calm. He's locked in. But Ryomen Sukuna is smiling. When faced with all that he has faced this far, to a broken, pierced, torn apart heart, to missing arms, to slowly regenerating one way, shape, or form, losing his entire lower eye, he still smiles. Because he loves Jujutsu. He loves the battle. He could not care less about humanity or anything that it could have to offer him. But Yuta Okkotsu, to his core, even as he opens the void of a god, still does not smile. It's all still business. It's all still just what needs to be done. Yuta Okkotsu was willing to become a monster, but I just don't think he has it in him. And that's beautiful. And it highlights the difference between Yuta Okkotsu and Satoru Gojo and everyone here. Ultimately, no one could become the monster. Not individually. But collectively is where I think they shall overcome Sukuna. Just in the same way that ultimately, despite the death of Satoru Gojo, and this twisted, evil, malicious resurrection in a weird, twisted sense, using the body of Satoru Gojo as the weapon that it is, rather than concerning themselves about the man who once existed in it. Ultimately, this is just another step. Just as Yuji was just another step, just as Todo was just another step, just as Choso was just another step, Miguel, LaRue, Kusakabe, Maki, everyone has just been a stepping stone to reach and knock down the monster. Just as Gojo Satoru was but a stepping stone to reach and knock down the monster. And that's what I'm most excited to see. I'm excited to see if Yuta can succeed, while still innately, at his core, being human. And if he fails, I'm interested to see how much progress he'll make against the King of Curses, now that he's inhabited the body of the man who brought him down this low in the first place. There's so much interest that this chapter provides, and there's so many more character things I'd like to go into more in depth, but once again, this is the quick review. So overall, this is an amazing chapter, and I love all that it does for the characters, what it does for the themes, and what it does to continue the ever-pertinent question of Jujutsu Kaisen. What is power? And what does power come with? Does it come with a loss of humanity? Does it come with an acceptance of it? And what does it truly mean to be the strongest? I think this chapter highlights all of that. And I cannot wait to see, after this week break, where it goes. Whether Yuta Okkotsu decides to fight alone, take that burden upon himself, just as Satoru Gojo attempted to do, or if he'll let others in. And what they, as a collective, will do against the one man who could truly transcend humanity to become a monster. I don't know, but I'm excited to find out. Ah! That's what I think. Please, what you guys think in the comment section down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave Malevolent Void. Leave Malevolent Void in the comment section down below. I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure to hit that little notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. You get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks include the 24-minute live reaction to this very chapter, ad free variations of all my videos, and if you become a $25 Patreon or a $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also, I do a link to my Ko-Fi in the description down below. If you want to leave a donation for your boy, any bit helps. For 5 beans, you can get a short video. 25 beans, you can get a long video. Any beans at all, it's always appreciated. But now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to thank you to our $3 members who Climb to Plays, Greyhound, Akids Void, Astro, Eternal Flame, King Sukuna, NMA, Real Rare, Paris Arnold, and G Prosper. And I'd like to thank you to our $5 patrons, Steron, Sean, Sammy, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin Encarnacion, Josh Brown, and A+A. And I'd like to thank you to our $7 patrons, Autumn Mornings Lazo and Fine. And I'd like to thank you to our $10 members, Robbie Uchiha and Jay Warrior. And I'd like to give another thank you to our $10 patrons, Panda Goat, Metal Solid Crisis, Joaquin Munoz, and Joaquin Munoz, along with Idemokami. And I'd like to give a final gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.